Hello and welcome back to Radical Disruption. I have Kaylia here with me, and Kaylia and I have been connected for quite some time now. I think that I was even following you before I started my own entrepreneurship journey. You have had a huge impact on my journey. I've had the opportunity of having you inside of IG University as a guest speaker, and I just absolutely love you, and I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yay! Thank you for having me. I am so excited about this. I'm so pumped up for our conversation. And I just love you and everything that you're doing. I'm just so proud.
You're so sweet. I appreciate you so much. I would love for listeners to get to know a little bit more about you. What is your entrepreneur story? How did you get to where you are today?
Yes. So my entrepreneur story kind of goes way back to when I was 17. I was a freshman in college when I started, and it's crazy because I'm 26 now. And by the end of this year, I will have been an entrepreneur for 10 years. And I do not feel old enough to say I've been an entrepreneur for a decade, which is wild. But I started back then with a blog, and I always knew that I wanted to do my own thing. I'm a terrible employee and I didn't want to go the corporate route. So I knew I had to figure that out, and college was a great opportunity to do that. So I started with a blog. From there, I found out about brand partnerships. But when I would offer to pay for mentorship, people weren't willing to because of my age, or they would put me down, and there was a lot of gatekeeping going on. And so I said, you know what, if I can figure out how to earn money from brand partnerships by monetizing my skills in that way, I will teach anyone who will listen on how they can do it too. And so I ended up learning. And from that, I started to create free education. So I went from just being influencer, blogger to then creator educator. Then from there, I actually launched an agency, a talent agency where we represent content creators and influencers with a friend of mine. So we co-founded it together. It's called Allura Society. And so it's been a really cool evolution, but the agency is technically my third business. I had an events company in college, and I was doing content creation and had my personal brand, digital courses, all that jazz, and then now the agency. So I love the entrepreneur life.
I love that so much. And I love how you were just like, nope, that like working for other people, not for me. I'm not even gonna go down that route. And you just jumped in and you're like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna figure it out. And
Exactly.
that is the best skill in my opinion of just, I'm not really sure how to do this, but let's just dive in and figure it out. Your niche is something that so many people have questions on. Brand partnerships. They're like, how do we do it? How do we find people? How do we pitch people? How many times we fall? Like all those questions.
Yes.
I want to dive into all the nitty gritty
Let's
details.
do it.
First question for you right off the bat is, how do you approach a brand that you want to work with? Like in terms of pitching them, and what do you say or what do you not say?
Yeah, we can go over both because there's a lot of what to say, what not to say. So, first thing is I get the question a lot, should I pitch via DM or should I pitch via email? I always say email. Now, if you happen to know maybe the social media person, or it's a smaller business or it's a more local business, DM might work better than an email. But traditionally, especially for the larger, more national companies, you want to pitch via email instead of DM. And so when you're sending out that pitch email, you want to make sure that you're giving part of telling them a story through that email. So it's not just, hey, I'm a creator, I'm an influencer, blogger, whatever you title yourself as, and I would love to work with you and I love your stuff and I think it's cool and pay me for something. You don't want to say that. Even if it's for a gifted thing and you're like, I'd be totally happy just getting product for this. You want to show them the way that you could partner with them. And so you want to make it as easy as possible for them to say yes to you. And so what that looks like is maybe a bullet point list of 3 different ways you could work with them. Maybe it's 3 different content ideas, and it's a get ready with me, or a try on haul for this, or maybe you're traveling and you want to show off what you're packing for that vacation. Maybe it's something like that. I will say that the pitching landscape has radically changed over the last 6 months. And so even for us as an agency, the way that we're doing pitches now is actually around what we call creator life moments or milestones. So if you're traveling, you're moving, you're starting a new job, or going into a new space, or a birthday's happening, a holiday that you often celebrate is happening, pitching around those moments traditionally convert a lot better than just pitching for random things every now and then, because then you're able to get in with them for an intentional moment and then build that relationship where then it could become 1 post a month or something consistent, or they invite you into a campaign that they have running. So you want to keep it short and sweet too. You don't want to have an entire life backstory of how you got started and why you love content and why you love them. you do want to have a moment where you say, hey, I've been using this product or this service or this experience forever, or how is there a natural alignment between you and them? The brand wants to know that. They want to work with organic and aligned partners already. And then you always want to end off with a CTA. So that could look like, hey, I'm happy to send over my media kit with further audience demographics and analytics. Maybe it's would love to hop on a 15-minute call just to hear more about campaigns you have running this year, or share more about how you guys could be integrated into this milestone moment, something like that. Give them something to do, a reason to respond to you. And then again, for not tos, don't put your media kit in there as a PDF. If you do any attachments as an initial email, it will bounce. It will not make it to their inbox. Don't make it way too long. Nobody wants to read that. I don't love reading super long emails. They don't love reading super long emails. So short, sweet, to the point is better. But that's how we're navigating pitching right now and how we send our emails out.
Whew. I'm like, we could literally end the episode right there. That was so good. Mic drop. What about links to like previous content? Have you done past
Mhm.
partnerships? Do you link that in those initial like pitch emails of, hey, here's past partnerships I've done, or is that no?
No, that's a really great thing that you brought up, because that is a big yes that we want to do. Because I could talk about pitching honestly for an entire 30 minutes. So I was like, okay, what are the quick ones we want to get to? But
So I
what I love to do in the pitch emails is say, here are some examples of content I've done in a similar capacity that you can see here, and then hyperlink. Hyperlinks are totally fine in an initial email. So that's really great. If you use a media kit on Beacons, is what we're using for a lot of our media kits now, because it automatically pulls and integrates all of your analytics and updates it for you, which is really nice. So check that out. That's a great tip. And you can integrate that also into your pitch email if you want to give them all the data at once.
I love that. Now, what happens when you pitch and there's crickets? You
Yeah.
didn't get any response. What do you do then?
Number one, understand that happens to everyone. Doesn't matter if it's us pitching as an agency and having been done, doing this for 9 years, or it's sometimes a really big influencer or creator. It happens to everyone. That's just the name of the game, right? Not every single email is going to get responded to. So just give yourself grace with that process and don't take it personally as, oh my gosh, they don't like me or they don't want to work with me. They could have just maybe not seen it. Maybe it accidentally ended up in spam or junk, or maybe their inbox is just really crazy. So if that's the case, what we like to do is 2 follow-ups. So we will do those a week apart from one another. So we'll send the initial pitch email out. We like to send them out on Tuesday mornings. We want to avoid Mondays because everyone's getting back in. We want to avoid Fridays because nobody's thinking about work. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays are traditionally the best times to pitch. So
I
let's
love
say we're sending it out on a Tuesday. That following Tuesday, we'll send out our first follow-up if we've not heard back from them. Then a Tuesday after that one, we will send out 14 days later from the initial pitch, we'll send out our second follow-up. At that point, if we still haven't heard back from them, we will usually repeat the process, but with a different contact.
Okay. And in that follow up, is it just, hi, just a reminder to look at me, or what are you saying in that?
Yeah. So it's just a hello. Wanted to check in on the previous email where I was sharing a partnership idea about XYZ for this life moment or for this month or etc. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Again, happy to hop on a call or looking forward to discussing more details with you soon. Then the second follow up will be similar of, hey, I know sometimes we'll be funny with it and be like, we know how crazy inboxes can get and how easily things can get buried. Wanted to nudge you again, see if you happen to see this.
Yeah,
Looking forward to hearing from you soon. We like to be very personable while also being professional. I think that sometimes creators are so like, hello, reaching out again to see if you have, and it's like, we don't have to be robotic. Like, this isn't, HR isn't watching our emails. Like, this isn't corporate. This is our own business. And so be yourself while still being professional about how you're doing it. Have a good email signature. We use Signature Hound for all of ours and love that, or a Y stamp, something like that. So it looks professional too. You're sounding professional. You're not like, yo, or like what it is. Please respond. But there's a way that you can still add your personality to things, which I highly recommend.
I love that. And I love that you touch on follow ups too, because even I'm obviously not like influencers aren't pitching me, but I get pitched all the time for my podcast, for people coming onto my podcast. And generally, I don't respond on the very first email because it just gets lost in my inbox, quite honestly. But
Yeah.
like second or third time of them following up. Like I even just had someone on, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, to the podcast, and she followed up 3 times. And every single time I was like, oh, I need to respond to her. And then the follow up was like almost a reminder. And so I just think it's so powerful, follow ups in the pitching space, because, and I think a lot of times we get in our head of, oh, the first time they didn't respond, that's something on me. Like they don't want to talk to me or this isn't going to work out. But really, truthfully, it's not personal. It's just as business owners, we're just busy and
Correct.
emails get bogged down all the time.
Yeah.
Something that you talked about was gifted partnership. So this
Mhm.
is we were just talking about pitching other brands. But what happens if a brand reaches out to us and they are like, "Hey, we want to gift you, let's just say this product." Is there any way that you can turn gifted partnerships into paid partnerships?
Yes, I love this question because it's the most common way brands honestly do reach out to us because we have to think about this from a business perspective on their end. If they can just give you free product and you're happy with that and you're willing to create content around it, awesome. They just saved money in their marketing budget.
Yeah.
If not, a lot of times they do have money to spend. Sometimes they don't. It's not a generality for every brand has money and it's this much money for every single creator in marketing.
Yeah.
But we have to think that if they can save money, they're going to save money. But on our end, as creators, influencers, however we title ourselves, we have to remember that we're a business. And so if we're a business, we ask to be paid. We need to ask to be paid. So even if it's a dream brand and you're like, oh my gosh, I would love this. This would be so great. Ask them, hey, I would love to partner with you. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I really enjoy this product already. I've actually been using it and integrating it into my routine for X amount of years. Would love to partner with you to create this kind of content. Would love to know what budget you're working with for this campaign, or would love to know what you've paid other creators in a similar capacity for work like this. Something like that that just leads into show me the money without being like, pay me this much, whatever. Some people will say, hey, for these deliverables, my rates are XYZ. You totally could do that too if you want. Typically, we like to feel out where they're at because a lot of times the brand has more money than sometimes we're even willing to ask because sometimes we sell ourselves short. So try and get them to say a number first. If not, make sure whenever you're sharing rates, whether it's a brand reached out to you or you reached out to them and now you're in negotiations, always give a rate that's a little bit above where you're willing to settle. You need to have that buffer room because negotiation is not a, oh, you just say a number, then they pick it because they're usually going to come back and say, hey, okay, your rate was 5,000 for this. We could only do 4,000. Okay, could you meet us? And then we'll say, can you meet us in the middle at 4,500 or 4,700? Because I know our talent or maybe you as a creator, you'd be totally fine with maybe 4,500. So we left that buffer room in between. So ask to be paid. If respond back and they're like, hey, it's just a gifting opportunity. That is then up to you on deciding whether or not it's worth it. Because if you're just starting out, gifted opportunities are really great to get experience and to understand how partnerships work, how campaign briefs operate, looking at different contracts, knowing how to create. It's a great way to jump into things. But I always tell students, make sure you have a cap on that. You should not be going into 20 gifted campaigns and then be like, oh, I'm never paid. And you're never asking to be paid. And you're not putting
Yeah.
hard boundaries. You have to have boundaries as well for yourself. So it's great if you want to get experience. If it's a dream brand and you're trying to build a relationship, you're totally welcome to take the gifted one, but don't bank it as if I take this gifted one, it's going to lead to a paid thing. You don't know what that's going to look like. So it's about assuming a certain level of risk, what you're willing to assume, and taking that on and building that relationship. I will say too that if the more relationships you can build with a brand's in-house team over a platform that they are working with is ideal, because platforms can sometimes change. Yes, people can leave internally too, but you have a personal one-on-one relationship with them versus just a platform. So I try and get off of platforms sometimes as you grow in experience. Platforms are great just getting started too, or trying to understand how things work in this space. But building those personal relationships with the brands one-on-one is going to be really key.
When you say platforms, what are you meaning by that?
Yeah. So like an influential, hashtag paid, Aspire, which are all great. And a lot of them are also partners of ours too at the agency. We love them. We have connections there. We work with their teams internally. They're awesome. They're great for newer creators. You're trying to get experience in the industry, or maybe you're switching niches or industries you're in and you want to get those like organic pieces of content, right? Hey, here are some examples of ways that I've worked with similar brands or created similar content. That's great with the platforms. But there gets to be a point where you're wanting to do this maybe more full time, or maybe it's you're getting to a range of making 50, 60, $70,000 from partnerships, building those in person, or not in person, but those internal relationships with a team at the actual company versus the agency working on behalf of the company is going to be really big. I will say though, a caveat to this, outside of the platforms, you have influencer marketing platforms like Influential, Aspire, hashtag paid. Those you can sign up for. They're free. Brands will send you the platform will send you campaigns that you're a good fit for. Then there's agencies that manage the actual marketing and strategy and brand partnerships for certain brands. So some brands, like if you're looking in the middle, I wish I could draw this out on a whiteboard because it gets really crazy here. But imagine in the middle, you have a brand can either decide to go with a platform like Aspire, hashtag paid, obviously, etc., and have them manage all their partnerships. Or a brand can go over to a bigger agency that maybe also does PR. They also do billboards. They also do in-store marketing, and they do influencer partnerships, and a brand can hire that. Or a brand can manage in-house marketing, right? So there's 3 different ways that you're looking at this. What we like to do is either build relationships with a brand's in-house marketing team or an agency that actually hosts multiple brands. So you might have, let's say,
Mm.
Dove, for example, is at this one agency, but that agency also represents Neutrogena. Maybe they represent L'Oreal. Maybe they represent Nike, whoever. I'm just throwing out random ones. They represent multiple brands at once. So if you get in with the agency, you get in with multiple partners.
Ooh, okay, that was so good. I was like, wait, I have a question on this, and then you would answer that. I was like, okay, wait, I have another question, and then you would answer it. I'm like, okay, obviously, you know what you're talking about. You are the expert in this, so I'm like, okay, do I even have any questions after this? Okay, and just kidding, but that was so good. So my question for you, going back to what you were talking about at the very beginning, when you were talking about negotiating from free to paid, you mentioned almost like giving you talked about 2 different things, giving kind of a range of a rate, and then you also talked about having your rate being higher than what you might think that it would be. Can you talk a little bit more about like how to determine rates, and especially when it comes to if you're pitching a brand and you had that call to action statement where you're like, hey, I'll send you over my media kit, and maybe the brand reaches back out and they're like, hey, I'd love to see your media kit. What are you putting on that media kit, especially because of what you said, you're going to go into negotiation. How do you know like how to set a rate when there's going to be a lot
Yeah.
of different variables that ultimately end up going into that partnership?
Absolutely. Which is so important to remember that every partnership is different, every campaign is different. So this is a very sometimes confusing question to answer as a creator thinking, yeah, what if they want this and this other brand wants this, and how do I find out a regular rate to do? So what we've actually created at our agency is equations that we use as baseline equations for every single piece of content. So if it's an Instagram reel, we have an equation for that. If it's Instagram story set, which is usually 3 to 4, sometimes 5 slides, we have an equation for that. If it's a TikTok video, YouTube video, you want to have a baseline of what you would charge for each individual piece of content, because where
Okay.
things start to get very distinct between campaigns is things like usage rights and exclusivity and whitelisting and turnaround times and net payments. All of those can also factor the rates that you actually charge. So coming from a baseline perspective, what do you actually want to be looking for? Number one, how much time are you spending to create that piece of content? So you want to figure out an hourly rate, whether that's 25 an hour. I have some creators that charge $300 per hour because their content is so high level and the amount of
Yeah.
time and expertise that they're able to put into that is immense. So they say, yeah, it's going to be, let's say $50 an hour, and it's going to take 3 hours to create this TikTok video. It's 60 seconds, right? So for that, I'm going to take 3 times 50. That's just my time that I'm charging for.
Yeah.
Then you want to look at audience access. How many followers? How big is your community? Because if it's actually being posted on your personal pages, that needs to be taken into account. So a good rule of thumb with that is about like 1% of what your community is. You can obviously charge higher or lower. Understand too, as a caveat to all of this, there
Yeah.
are no baseline rates for this. Like it's still the Wild West. I have some creators that have 40,000 that are charging more than people that have 150,000 that I know of. And we
Yeah.
have creators that have 200K that charge more than some people that I know that have a million. There's no, oh, it has to be this and you can't go above this, because if you can justify it with being able to convert or being able to get engagement or being able to deliver high quality content, or you have experience, you have expertise, like you're not really going to have to create content that needs a reshoot because you
Yeah.
know what you're doing. You can command higher fees for that. So we talked about time spent, we talked about audience access. Then with other things, you're thinking about, again, just experience, like value. What value do you bring to the table? I know that's really hard to put a number on. Sometimes people just say, I'm just going to charge hourly, a higher hourly rate. And that's going to be the value that's baked into that. So those are the things you're thinking about, plus any fees. So if you have to drive and you have to pay tolls, or there's gas involved, you have to buy new clothes, you have to buy food, you have to buy something, right? You're paying out of pocket. Make sure your expenses are covered. You should be reimbursed for all of that. So you want to bake that into your fee as well. And then outside of that, I'll give you your baseline for that piece of content. Then when you're starting to get a campaign from a brand, they will tell you, hey, we want usage rights, which essentially usage rights are where they can use that piece of content and for how long. We want usage rights. We want exclusivity. Hey, if you're working with us, you can't work with any of these other brands. Usually it's a list of 5. You should always ask for their competitors. And then whitelisting is, hey, we want you to post this piece of content on your Instagram feed, and then we're going to come in on the back end and we're going to boost it. We're going to put money behind this reel and push it out to a bunch of additional people. And it's going to be an ad for us, but it's going to be coming from your page. So for each of those, you have different percentages you want to charge, and they can be a range as well. And so you actually look at the deliverable cost. So if I'm charging, let's say, $300 for an Instagram reel, then and they want usage rights for, let's say, 3 months. This is where y'all might want to get a piece of paper out.
I'm like, ooh, we're gonna need to listen to this at like half speed and listen to it like 4 times. I'm like trying to soak it in. I feel like I'm like
I give a lot of information, but hopefully it's all good stuff for you can
no, it is.
know as
It's
you're
so
navigating. Yeah. As you're navigating different things, like these are really important things for you to know when you're figuring out rates. And so I know piece of paper, we're looking at $300 for the piece of content. Then for usage rights, we would take $300. Let's say you want to charge about 25%. You'd say $300 times 25%. I don't do math in my head, but whatever that number is, you would then multiply that by 30 days. Okay. So every 30-day period would be that rate. So you're looking at a month to month rate. So then you would say, okay, if they want it for 3 months, it'd be 300 times 25% times 3 for those 3 months. So 3 30-day periods, right? So that's like a usage rights equation. So you do that for whitelisting and exclusivity. Whitelisting, I've seen anywhere from 30% to 50%. For exclusivity, 50% could be up there too. Like it's anywhere between 20 to 40, 50-ish. A lot of it is feeling it out, seeing what they have the budget for. Some brands have the budget to pay you a 50% rate. Some brands only have a 20% rate. So there's a lot of math involved. And I didn't expect that going into things because I'm more of a reading and writing girl. But I gotta get really good at math over here. But using equations helps because then you can just plug and play instead of being like, I'm throwing things at a wall hoping they stick. And a lot of times brands will ask us, we'd love to see the breakdown of how you got to this rate. And we actually provide the breakdown where we say the piece of content is this, the usage rights is this, the exclusivity is this, in like a bullet point menu kind of format. So brands aren't asking that as much anymore. But I have had a lot of creator friends that just throw out a rate and brands are like, how'd you get to this number? And they're like, I don't know. We don't want to do that. So having the equations really helps.
I love that. And would you, if you were to share like the breakdown of like the usage rights and all that, would that be after you pitch them, here's my starting rate? Does that make sense? Would it be like, here's my starting rate, and they come back and they're like, okay, this is, and then you like go into negotiations and then you're like, okay, now here's my usage, here's this, as they say, oh, I also want usage, I also want whitelisting. Is that like something that comes later? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So typically I like to get all those details up front because how am I going to give you a rate if I don't know what you actually are looking for? Because if you're saying, okay, yeah, I want to know what a reel is, that's great. But what are the usage rights for the reel? Do you have any exclusivity involved? Do you want to whitelist the reel? All of that's going to change the ultimate proposal that I'm giving you. So we're creating custom proposals at the beginning. And so what we do when we get an inbound or if we get it, let's say a brand reaches out to us, we get an inbound is what we call it. Then we have a list of questions that we ask them. When are you looking for this content to go live? This is if they don't lay it out. Brands are starting to get sometimes better about laying it out. Here's the timeline, usage, exclusivity. They just bullet point everything. If that's not the case, we have a list of questions where we need to know all of these things before we can even provide you with an investment. Mm-hmm. And we've also not been calling it a rate. We call it an investment. So the investment for this piece of content, the investment for this campaign, or the investment for this creator, or for me to create this content would be X. And here's a breakdown of that. I know you also asked a media kit question too earlier that I didn't answer in terms of what to actually have in that. What I will say on the topic of rates is do not put rates in your media kit. you can have a rate sheet, and sometimes you can send that out to brands. We keep that for us more internally now to know, see it like a menu for our creators of what do they charge for this, that, and the other, because we're managing multiple people. But it's also good for you to have to refer back to. And it's in that rate sheet, you want to actually have it be a higher price. So let's say you'd be fine accepting $500 for a reel, maybe put $700. And I always put a plus sign at the end. So it's $700 plus, because usage rights, exclusivity, whitelisting, there's going to be additional things that get factored into that. And so the rate sheet's going to have your prices. Think of it just like a menu of your prices. Your media kit is actually about your analytics, your demographics, content that you've previously created, maybe a case study of a brand that you've worked with before. Maybe it's a testimonial of a brand you've worked with. So it's going to show why you're a good partner, a little bit of background on you, and numbers that nobody can refute on why you'd be a good fit.
I love that. One thing that you said was like a case study. What metrics are brands looking for in order to hire you? Does that make sense? Are they
Yeah.
looking for the amount of followers you have? Are they looking for past partnerships and how those converted in terms of sales, in terms of like link clicks? Like what generally are brands looking for? And I'm sure each brand has a different goal with their partnerships, but what would you say generally people are looking for?
Yeah, because it does depend on the kind of campaign that a brand is running. Because if they want an awareness campaign and they're trying to get the most people to see it, then follower count does it is taken into consideration. Now, if a brand's saying, "Hey, we have this really niche product, maybe it's a curly hair care product. We need girls that have naturally curly hair," and that's fine if they're a nano influencer and they have under 10,000 followers. We just want someone that's in this targeted niche, and that's a good fit. So followers not taken into account. It's what kind of community do you have, and how deep
Mhm.
is that community in this specific field. Engagement rate is always going to be huge. So a lot of brands are looking for about a 3% at minimum engagement rate. 5% is ideal. And if you have a 10%, you are like on the money. Brands are jumping at the bit to work with you. So engagement rate is going to be really key. They're also looking at comments. And if you're in comment pods, they are turned off by that. Brands are also turned off if you hide your likes, because they want to know whether or not the engagement is good. Now, there's a ton of tools that we can use on the back end, like being in this industry, to see that, whether you hide it from us or not. We can see the engagement and how things are doing. But it is a turnoff to brands because they're like, I don't know where you're at and what I'm looking for and like how this piece of content is going to do. And I'd have to do a ton of research to do that. So it really depends on the goals. But if you have good engagement, if you are actively involved with your like community, responding back intentionally, if you are also like if you're creating really great content, and what I mean by that is like high quality content, doesn't mean it has to be professionally filmed, but not grainy or blurry or hard to understand, that
Yeah.
is going to be really attractive to brands.
I love that. When you say engagement rate, there's so many different ways you can calculate that. Is there a tool that people could use to figure out their engagement rate? Is there a certain formula that you use?
Yeah, we've done formulas on the back end, but sometimes it can get really intense, especially if you're looking things up really quickly. So we've recently used Modash or Flanks. And so if you just look up like Instagram engagement rate calculator, TikTok engagement rate calculator, sometimes it's like a little bit different per platform depending on how they choose to look at engagement. But
Yeah.
majority of the time, it's usually like followers divided by, I think, either comments or likes, and then times 100, something around that range, or followers divided by likes, average likes plus comments times 100, something like that. But using the platforms are really great. And again, if you use beacons, which is what we've started to integrate into the agency, it will show you your engagement rate right there on your media kit. And it's something easy for you to just grab to be able to share with a brand, or to be able to send and say, hey, here's all of my data.
I love that so much. Okay, I want to go back to contracts really quick. I know that you talked about like usage rights and whitelisting and all of that good stuff. Is there anything else though that sometimes brands like to hide in like the fine print that people need to look out for in contracts?
Oh my gosh, every day, every contract. This is why it's so important to know like your legal terms and understand contracts. And it's a huge thing that creators do not pay enough attention to. And it's what screws you over the most, because
Yeah.
you've heard it, I'm sure you've heard it a million times, where someone's, oh, this brand's using my piece of content on an ad or on a billboard. And it's okay, well, look at the contract, look at the licensing terms in the contract. You signed away usage rights in perpetuity, which look out for anything perpetuity in a contract. redline the heck out of that. When I say redline, that is the industry term for editing or getting something redacted, getting something taken out of the contract or adjusted. So redline anything in perpetuity, but some people are signing off rights to say, yeah, you can use it wherever, however, and for however long you want. We never want to have that. Beyond that, indemnification should always be mutual. If crap hits the fan, we're both held liable for our part of stuff hitting the fan, and making sure it's not, oh, it's only the brand only has indemnification from you. It should always be mutual. Confidentiality should always be mutual. Keep an eye out for if a brand, I lost my train of thought. There's so many. I'm thinking of so many different contract terms at one time. Let me think what else. We did usage rights, whitelisting, also having like content deadlines. If there's approvals required, if there are revisions required, like we only ever have our creators do one revision. Each additional revision is $150 per revision. Some brands will put in there, we have unlimited revisions or unlimited edits. It's no, we're not doing that at all. So we don't want any of that in there. I would say those are probably some of the biggest ones off the top of my head. The perpetuity one is one I see a lot. And also just making sure, like reading through it in full, because sometimes brands will just grab a contract from who knows where and use it for this campaign, and it doesn't match up. A good example is we had a creator that was coming out to do it, she was getting gifted festival tickets in exchange for content. And in the contract, it was talking about, in the termination clause, it was saying that, hey, if the contract's terminated, then the pro rata portion, which essentially means you're getting X amount for the work that's left to be done or that was supposed to be done, but we're not continuing with because we're terminating it, you're going to be paid out. There was no money involved. So we were like, this needs to be redlined. So just making sure it actually makes sense. What's being said it makes sense for the actual campaign. And y'all, we always joke that freaking Chat GPT, he's on our payroll. Chatty Boy is on our payroll. We use Chat GPT a ton. Okay. What does this
Love it.
mean? Can you explain this? Can you break this down in simple terms? There's so many great resources out there now too with AI, and there's a way to use AI that doesn't take away our complete creativity and be us. But we use that for a lot of contract review too, because sometimes brands put things in there. I'm like, what are you saying?
I love that. I love that. I actually just used it just the other day for a contract that I was reviewing. So I'm glad I'm
Love
not
it.
alone in that. I love ChatGPT. I'm like, it's like
Yes.
my second brain. I use my own brain first, and then I go to my second brain, and then I come back to my own brain.
Yeah, exactly. That's
I
exactly
love
how we use it too.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so that was what to look out for in contracts, but are there any mistakes just in general when it comes to brand partnerships, not specific to necessarily contracts, but just mistakes in general that creators and business owners should avoid at all costs to make sure that they're getting the most out of their experience working with brands?
Yeah, I would say we talked about being professional, but that really goes a long way. Just being easy to work with. A big mistake is not being timely with your responses and then not being professional with the way that you conduct things. Listen, like life happens, life be lifing sometimes, and you're running late for something or you're sick and you're not able to deliver a piece of content on time. Communicate that. A lot of people will just let deadlines go by, and then the brand's wondering where they go and what's going on, and they would have been more than happy to extend you grace if you had just communicated. So it's sometimes just small things like that that end up with creators not getting opportunities with that brand again because they didn't communicate and they were hard to work with. Brands love working with people over and over again because it's so hard to find good creators. If you are a good creator, you will be hired again and again and often referred to other brands that they're friends with for other opportunities and campaigns. So I would say that. I would say obviously not reading contracts is a big thing, not asking for money, not asking for enough money, not pushing yourself in negotiations, and really advocating for yourself and putting your foot down, especially as a woman in this space too, of saying, hey, here are my this is the investment, this is why this is the investment, and this is why no, I can't budge on that, not being afraid to do that. And I would say the last mistake is just not asking questions about what they're looking for, something you don't understand in a contract, something you don't really get in a brief, or they don't have a brief and you would love to have a brief, or examples of content they have enjoyed seeing or approved before. I would say those are some of the biggest things.
I love that. Something that you mentioned is working with brands long term. How can you
Mm.
position yourself besides being easy to work with? How can you position yourself and maybe even pitch to a brand that long term brand partnership?
Yeah. So long term partnerships are really developed off the back of a one off partnership. or it's something that they're approaching you and saying, we would love to do this 3-month thing because it's very specific, very perfect for you. But when it comes to, let's say you pitch to a brand, you work with them, you do a one off, it went really great. When at the end of that, after I've submitted my final invoice, all the content, everything's approved, everyone's on a high, and it went really well. We loved working together. It was great. I'll say, loved working with you. Would love to hop on a call for 15, 20 minutes and chat about some additional ideas that I had to support you, further this year or support you in the next quarter, or to hear about more campaigns that you have coming up. But usually I like to, again, lead and facilitate that conversation because I'll come in with ideas on how I can support them, make it easy for them to take that back to the higher ups and say, yep, you're approved. Here's $10,000. Let's work together for the next 3 months. And so it's relationship building is really what long-term partnerships are. And it's a lot of getting on calls. I do majority of the face-to-face conversations for the agency. And so I'm always on calls with brands and agencies and platforms and creators and talking and building a relationship. So it's not just a transaction. It should be a relationship between you and who you're working with. And then when it comes to long-term opportunities, next to pitching at the end of things, if I've worked with a previous partner before, but maybe I didn't pitch at the end, and maybe it's been a couple of months, and maybe you're sitting here thinking, oh, I've worked with that brand, I would love to do something with them again, or I'd love to do something long-term with them. Send them a new pitch. Hey, loved working with you back in January. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed creating content around this. I had some additional ideas on how I could support you in the holiday season or how I could support you in Q3 or whenever you're listening to this. Would you be open to hopping on a call to chat with them, or happy to send them over via email if that's easier for you? It's as simple as that. I think we overcomplicate it and make it so much bigger in our head. It's
Yeah.
not. This is just business. This is just figuring out, are there opportunities here? Are there not? Constantly putting yourself out there. And that's why in this space too, you have to be really comfortable with getting rejected or being told no. And what I always say, because it's going to happen no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter how great your content is, it will happen. But
Yeah.
I always say that every no is just a not yet, or every no makes room for a better yes. So don't get bogged down by the no's or the not yets that you might hear. Focus on, okay, great. At least I tried. At least I'm not wondering what if. At least I put myself out there. And okay, I'm going to try for another one. Like, you just have to keep rolling, let it roll off your back and keep moving forward. Otherwise, you'll get really bogged down by the no's that you got or what you feel like you were rejected on, and stop advocating for yourself. And I never want you to stop advocating for yourself, because there are great partners out there and you could be exactly who a brand is looking for. They just haven't found you yet.
I love that so much. Oh my goodness. You're just amazing. I'm like, I can't even believe that this is all for free. I'm like, we need to put this like behind a paid wall or something. Okay, my last question for you in terms of brand partnerships, and then I have one about your journey to end with. My last question though is, how do you attract brands through your content? Because it's one thing to go out pitching brands, which I think is always needed, always good to be doing, but you hear about a lot of times like these brands reaching out to creators. And how do you go about creating content and setting up your Instagram account in a way where brands are wanting to reach out to you?
Yeah, really good question. Number one, have your email in your bio. Point
Mm.
blank. Honestly, that could be if that's the only thing that you take away from all of this, let it be that, because if you don't have it in your bio, it's so hard for brands to reach out, because the email button that we can add in as a profile option, that doesn't show up on desktop. And in all
Mm.
those platforms that like brands are using, or just brands looking at it organically, like on their desktop looking you up, they don't see it. So then they have to like go to your link in bio and then see if you have an email thing, and then see if that email is the right email. And then sometimes that email is not the right one that's on a website. And then is this one, do you fill out a contact form? Do you like, it's so
Yeah.
messy. Just if they can go on your page and they're like, I like you, I want to submit you for an opportunity. Let me just copy this, put it in here, boom. Takes them 2 seconds. Because sometimes, like, we're all human. If it takes us too long to do something, we're just like checked out.
Yeah.
We're good.
Well,
So,
I love that. I always say like less steps equals more conversions. And
yes.
that's like a perfect example.
Exactly. So have your email in your bio. And then number two, like when you're looking at, in terms of how people or how brands are looking at a page, it's they're looking at your bio, then they might go through a couple highlights, but then they're scrolling right down to your feed and giving an overview. If your content sucks, I'm sorry, but a brand's not going to want to work with you. It's just point blank. That is the blunt truth. If it's grainy, if it's blurry, if it's all over the place, if you don't really have a clear direction of what you're talking about and who you're talking to, it's really hard for brands to see themselves in your content. And that's the big thing, is they have to see themselves in your content as a partner, as support in your content. It should not be hard for them to imagine how would we integrate as part of what she's already creating organically. So there has to be that natural alignment there. And then number 3, I would say, is creating organic content around the brands you already love. If you're doing your skincare routine and you're like, I'm like doing this as I'm like talking face to cam, tag the brands. If I'm curling my hair and I have the curling, I'm going to tag T3, which is what I use for my hair, right? That's how I got on their PR list, because it's just tagging. Like, brands go back and look at who is tagging them, who in photos, in reels, in stories, right? Stories are really great. And if you can tag a brand in your stories and then they repost it or they respond back to it, now you have an open line of communication, which we will often use to sometimes grab the right email address. Hey, like, I've loved using this serum every single night for my skin. Wanted to reach out with a partnership idea to your team. Who's the best person to connect with? Because now it's not going to go to their request because they open that line of communication. So tagging brands organically. And I was just on LinkedIn the other day and I saw in the same day, multiple different brands were like, so thankful for all the creators that organically talk about us because we just ended up hiring multiple of them for upcoming campaigns.
Wow. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. That is such a good tip. Okay. My last question for you is, if you could go back to day one of your journey and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh man, I'd give myself a lot of advice, to be honest. But if I had to pick one though, I would say that you are worth advocating for. I would tell myself that. I really was a lot more shy with asking for the amount of money I wanted to receive, for asking for things to be taken out of a contract, for asking for opportunities that I wanted. And to be honest, I don't know, I'm gonna put this on the record. I genuinely believe one day I'll write a book just about advocating for yourself through networking and for opportunities and through payment and in business, and as a female entrepreneur, as a Christian entrepreneur, like, what does advocation for yourself look like? Yeah. And so with that, it just changes the way that you do everything. It changes the way you show up. It changes the way you ask for different things. And there's a way to do it that's not cringy and gross and ew, and in a way that makes people be like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course you're the perfect fit for this. Of course, like, why didn't I think of that sooner? Or yes, you're actually, that makes sense why your rates are that, or that makes sense why that shouldn't be in the contract, or that. And it's not always going to be that fluid, but you're worth advocating for, you're worth standing up for, and just owning that with confidence and just showing up with confidence, because no one is you. And the new tagline I released this year is be the next you. And part of that is surrounded in advocating for yourself and just showing up for yourself day in and day out.
Amen to that. That was so good. Okay, you've given like a fire hose of information, and I'm just like literally like blast. I'm just like, holy, we all need to listen to this 10 times over. So good. I know that people want to connect with you. Where can they connect with you? Where can they learn more? What opportunities do you have for people to work with you?
Yes. So please come say hi on Instagram. Please DM me if you've listened to this. It's at Kaylia Nicole. I know it'll probably be in the show notes as well. But Instagram is where I spend the most time, or Threads. I'm a big Threads girl, so love me some Threads. And then in terms of resources, I have a couple different options. So underneath Alora, we have a beginner's guide to brand partnerships. So if you liked this and you're like, that's great, Kaylia, but can I like see the equations for pricing yourself written down? And can I learn more about usage rights and exclusivity and creating content that converts to partnerships and media kits and rate sheets and all of that jazz? And then beyond that, I also have a negotiation playbook. And so that's going to teach you more about how to make more money from different opportunities and just different tactics and strategies and tips that we use at Alora. And then if you're a creator listening to this and you already make over $100,000 from brand partnerships and you're looking for representation, then we would love to represent you and have a conversation about that, which you can always DM me about.
Oh my goodness, you are so amazing. Not surprised whatsoever. I absolutely adore you, love you. Thank you so much for your knowledge. You are absolutely amazing. And I am just so grateful that I had the opportunity to connect with you through Instagram, and just all the amazing opportunities that I've had to be able to learn from you over the years. And I know that we're going to continue to be able to connect in the future. But thank you for pouring into my community today. I appreciate you so much.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me.